Mr. Hammis is going to share his screen, and then we'll get started with the budget presentation, Mr. Chair.
All right. Take it away, Steve.
All right. Hopefully you can see my screen.
All right. I'll get this started. Thank you, Steve. This is, of course, our run through of the proposed budget for 2021. And as you know, our budget committee is myself, Mr. Hammis, Mr. Schreifels, Ms. Utes. And we've, of course, had a lot of help from leadership team and all the other employees. And so I want to make sure we thank the committee and everybody that works so hard on this budget. We do start it quite early in the year, typically in April and May. Departments start looking at the budgets. And then the budget committee really takes it from there, holds meetings with all of those departments. And then, of course, we bring the budget to you. You got a glimpse of it at your last meeting, along with performance indicators. And then you certainly aren't expected to take action at this meeting, but we do need to set the preliminary budget and levy at your next regular meeting. And then you don't need to take any action on it necessarily until we hold the public hearing on December 1st. And then by your last meeting of the year, you need to adopt the final budget. And your meeting in your last meeting is December 15th. So we do all this with the county's mission in mind, of course, safe, healthy, vibrant county for all. And as you saw in our performance indicators, we weave our values into everything we do. So this budget is also aimed at being professional, approachable, responsive, collaborative, and fair and equitable. So some of the things that we have within this budget are financial. Here you see financial. We want to prepare a budget and a levy that keeps the tax rate as low as possible. And I think you're seeing that we're trying to do that with where we are with the budget today at only 1.59% increase in the levy. And especially this year, I think that's important because we don't really know, what the future is going to hold here with the pandemic. And so we've been hesitant to use a lot of fund balance, at least at this point. And we wanted to keep this, of course, the tax increase as low as possible. Also stay a little nimble so we have some reserves available in case things take a turn even for the worse. Hopefully not. And of course, the tenderness of the economy is in our mind as well. So, and as you know, we're reviewing the fee structure, and you'll see that we continue to make some changes to the appropriations to outside agencies. And we've been working a little bit with our debt planning. We're seeing that differently than we did 6 months ago. And so we've been massaging that and looking at a little change in some of the projects, particularly in the improvements to the administration building. And then, of course, we're in a pretty unknown place with some state and federal funding, and you'll see that we're looking at some significant reductions, particularly in highway funding. And in infrastructure, we have, of course, we'll continue to collect the wheelage tax and the sales tax revenue, local option sales tax. And this is the fourth year that we'll be collecting that. So we'll probably want to start talking about whether we're going to continue to use that to make improvements to our roads. And as I said, we're talking right now about changing really what we were going to do with the administration center. We've re-engaged the architect with our department directors to see what, if we can get a handle on what our new world might look like and what that might mean for changes or improvements to the administration center. We are in the process right now of choosing a consultant to do the law enforcement center, justice center study. We have it down to a couple of consultants, and I believe we're interviewing them next week. And so that'll be a recommendation that will come back to the county board sometime soon. The next slide talks about technology, and we continue to monitor and protect our cybersecurity systems. In fact, we've been sending out phishing emails that as a way to help our employees learn about phishing and what to open and what not to open, and that was actually went quite well. Continue to work on some initiatives for broadband. We do have a couple of providers that I think will be bidding on some of the federal money to upgrade in the western part of the county. One is actually looking for some help, and so we need to think about that. And if we think anything should happen there, we'll bring that back to the board. You'll see that we will upgrade the phone system, and that was something that was also in process before the pandemic, and so we've taken a step back and to see if some of the changes in our operations, what that means for our phone system. Obviously, we've made use of different technology during the pandemic that may change how we go about the new phone system. And then systems for providing services in as many platforms as possible. And we've done that on the fly here, but we want to do that in a little more organized manner. I'll stop right there and just remind you that when we did this strategic planning process in March, it was, I think, that was on Tuesday, and I think on Thursday we got our first cases of coronavirus, and we opened up the Emergency Operations Center soon thereafter. And so the strategic planning process was stopped basically, but we picked that up in the last couple of weeks. And actually this continued through systems is something that really came out in our first session as one of our objectives for the coming year. And again, the board will see that when we do get done. We have 2 more sessions with the leadership team to continue to polish up that strategic plan. And then we'll be able to bring it to the board for your input too. Organizational, I think these are all, again, similar to what you've seen in the past because we didn't add anything new because our strategic planning process was interrupted. But as you know, we need to fund mandated programs. We will continue, and we continue to work with AMC, MICA, and our legislative delegation. As you know, we've expanded our training and development with staff, and so that's becoming quite a robust training and development program and system. And as you know, we continue to work with community mental health issues, such as the CAT team and the new mental health facility that will begin construction early next year. And the best practices is also something that's coming out big time in our strategic planning process. And then, of course, what COVID-19 has done to us and how it continues to impact us, we don't really know, but we do know that we reprioritized our technology spending, particularly. We did that in other areas as well, but and so there was a number of projects that didn't get done by our technology staff because they were doing so many other things, which, by the way, they did a great job. And so you'll see a little less of a capital expenditure for the IS department in 2021. As you know, we've been ramping that up every year, but given the circumstances today, we'll actually pull it back. And then, as I said earlier, we're reevaluating that capital plan and the debt plan, and so you'll see that the debt level payment will be the same as budgeted for in 2020. So those are just some of the highlights. The numbers. The total budget is actually a reduction in expenditures. The road construction budget is a big part of that. If you take that out, we really will see it's less than 1% of an increase in total expenditures. So it is actually a little bit of an increase to take out the road constructions, because you'll see later that we don't have as many projects, but we also are seeing a reduction in state aid to our highway department. And then the next slide shows you the levy expenses. And what you'll see when you see some more detail here is that that's not really difference from requested, that's difference from last year's levy. So this is a levy increase of $1,230,000, which translates to the 1.49%. And again, you can see that there was pretty minimal changes in a number of areas there. We did just get done with the Railroad Authority meeting today too, which of course is blended into the total levy, and we reduced that levy by $38,000. That levy has been near $100,000, but we were able to show a reduction in that levy, which will help in this overall burden for the taxpayers. So I think that's the broad overview, and I think, Steve, are you going to take it over from here?
Yes, I'll take it over from this spot. So I'm going to go over some of the more deeper dive details in the budget. The first thing I want to go over are changes in non-levy funding. As Mike indicated, we are seeing reductions in lots of different areas. We are fortunately seeing some increases in some parts of our revenue streams as well. So I'm not going to go over all of these, but I just wanted to highlight some of the larger ones. Again, highway funding is going down, and that is from state and federal funding based on the projects that we're doing. So some of that is just the projects that are on the slate for the next year don't come with as many different revenue sources. And so that then relates to a year-to-year reduction in the revenue there. We're seeing a reduction in fee revenue that we're expecting from general fund departments. So this is, again, the Sheriff's Auditor's Office, Property Services, and Environmental, to the tune of about $93,000, based on what we expect business to be in the next year. Human service fees are also expected to be going down from about $72,000. And solid waste fees for the household hazardous waste are going down about $53,000. There are, some revenue areas that are going up. SPOR funding is going up. Our county program aid from the state is right now slated to go up $120,000. Intergovernmental revenue overall in the general fund for those departments I had just mentioned is going up about $250,000. Human services reimbursements. Services has done a tremendous job in the last couple of years of trying to make sure that they get all of their time studies done as accurately as possible to improve their reporting. And that all, as Melissa's told you about in different board meetings over the past year, is then reflected based on the reimbursements that we get from state and federal sources. And those increases in reimbursement rates are reflected in our budget for next year as an increase of over $700,000. And so overall, what we're looking at on these line items is a reduction of about $2.5 million, with some other miscellaneous revenue changes. Countywide, it is a reduction in revenue of $2.4 million. And again, that's the bulk of that will be from the highway project. Again, looking at the overall county trends on budget and levy, looking back over the last several years, you see that we're showing that our levy has gone up relatively low in terms of numbers, below 5% over the last 8 years. And again, we're recommending for this year a levy increase of 1.49%. This is just a snapshot of history of us compared to the MICA counties in terms of levy increases. At this point, I haven't seen a lot of information for 2021. We always get that after this presentation is done. And so as the fall continues, we'll be able to bring in information on where all the other MICA counties are at for 2021 rates, as well as our surrounding counties, since I know the board's also interested in that. But as you can see, Stearns County, which is in red, last year the average was 4.8% and we were at 2.9. We were also a percent below the average in 2019 as well, and pretty close to the average the past 3 years prior to that. Looking at personnel requests, there were minimal personnel requests for 2021. It was almost exclusively in the Sheriff's Department for a data analyst, an additional deputy, and a couple of sergeants. We're also looking at the facilities department to take a part-time staffer and make them full-time. The recommendation going forward is to deny all of these except for the facilities position and move that to a full-time slot. We do want to point out that the sergeant were recommended as part of the organizational study that was done by the ICMA agency, and so we're going to defer those until the 2022 budget. Looking at expenditure breakdown, again, I think Mike talked about this in his memo to you a couple of weeks ago. Personnel is the largest increase in our budget. Most public service agencies have a budget where personnel is 2/3 to 3/4 of their total expenses. Stearns County, with a 3.8% increase in our total personnel costs, is running at 56% of our total budget is tied up in personnel. Services, this includes all of our contracts for service, our professional services, all of the highway construction, all of our infrastructure projects for buildings is going down 6%. Again, most of that is related to highway projects. Our supply budget is going down 7%. This is, again, just the operational office equipment and supplies for maintaining operations. And some of this from talking to departments is due to the fact that we're operating in this new format, more lean, more technical. And so that's part of the reason why this is going down. Also, 2021 is not an election year, and so that's about $200,000 of that supply budget is from not being an election year. Capital outlay is going up slightly, about 1%. It's about $50,000. This is, again, all of our capital equipment, things that are over $5,000 that have a long life. So this is our plow trucks, our squad cars, all of the technology purchases. And again, that's going up just slightly at 1.2%. And so that reflects, again, as Mike indicated, that the total expenditure budget is going down by 0.7% from 2020. And then we have our outside agencies, as we discussed a little bit earlier, that we've been continuing to revise how we are funding these. The requests for these agencies came in relatively flat. Again, everyone acknowledging that this is a unique circumstance here, and so we've kept our funding levels relatively flat as well. We're going down just a few $1,000s. The library, as our joint powers agreement with them, is a reduction of $18,000, and so that is the biggest decrease. All other agencies have been held flat, with the exception of the Child Advocacy Center. We're doing a $5,000 increase for the work that they do with us on dealing with issues related to childhood trauma. And I know Human Services is also having a little bit of funding for them as part of their regular budget as well. We talked about the capital improvement plan and that we are reconfiguring that and trying to see what changes can be made. Just wanted to list out the projects that are slated to begin as part of 2021. First of these is a key card system upgrade. Our key card system is apparently run through its useful life, and we need to upgrade the system in order to maintain technology as well as to expand with all the doors that we have throughout the buildings and provide some better service and better tracking. And so we're going to be undertaking that next year. That's $170,000. As we talked about earlier, we're going to be reconfiguring the administration center remodel. We want to focus, as we've said all along, most of the projects in this particular set of projects have to deal with issues related to safety and security. The $3.5 million here is what the total budget for the administration center is. This is not just the spending that would take place in 2021. In 2021, again, as we go through and talk with departments about how we can or should change the scope of this building in relation to everything that we've been dealing with the last 6 months, we do still want to make sure that we're dealing with issues related to safety and security, focusing on the rotunda and the entrances and some of the public spaces in the building. Parks is going to be looking at Lake Coronis and getting that shower building done. That's a project that has been talked about, I think almost the entire time I've been here with the county between us and Candy, Ohio, for about 20 years. We will be undertaking to replace the boilers. The boilers in our administration center are original to the building from 1991, and they have worked through their useful life. And if I remember correctly, they're actually shipboard in boiler engines that they don't make anymore, and so we're going to have to replace those, and we're looking at that being about a $250,000 project. And then the last one that'll be starting next year is one we've talked about previously, which is to do some readjustments and replace the ring road. Again, we own the ring road around the courthouse, from the entrance to the parking lot right outside the administration center, all the way around to the stop sign by the court facility building. And just in terms of again, issues related to safety and security, want to make sure that we make some changes there for accessibility to the buildings. All right. Moving forward, again, looking at some of the major technology projects, IS has been working with all the departments to calculate and prioritize all of the wants and needs from all of the departments. These are the largest projects that are on tap for starting in 2021. Again, not all of this spending will take place during 2021. Some of these projects will be paid for over multiple years based on the length of the project. The first one, the most expensive one, is a replacement for the software system that runs the sheriff's dispatch and record system. It also runs the jail booking and record system, and is essentially the heart and soul of what makes the sheriff's department work. They've been doing a lot of outreach and scope of work, defining what the project scope is going to be over the past 12 months or so, and trying to figure out what kind of systems we need. That project is currently being written up as an RFP to go forward, but that it will be an expensive project. We're estimating that at about $2.5 million. We'll also be updating our payroll and HR systems. That again is a multi-year project, but again, we're looking at that one being over $1 million as well. We've talked about upgrading our phone system. I think Mike did a good job of discussing the scope of what that's going to be next year. And again, as part of this, we don't know that everyone's going to need a hard phone, because we don't know that our capabilities won't be that people won't still work from home, or we'll have people who want to work remotely and take advantage of that. And so have phones that live on our laptops permanently. And so as we're running through that scope of work, they're changing what that project looked like. And again, we think that'll be about $800,000. The next one is one that has been highlighted as one that's of importance of the past year. The attorneys have a case management system that tracks and manages all their documents and all their files for all the court cases that are going through their department. And that system is rather old. It runs on an Oracle system that most people don't use anymore. And so we're looking at replacing that. And it's a system that certainly is showing its age as we're having people work remotely. And so this is one that we do think is important to move forward. And so this is about $500,000. And lastly, our tax and CAMA systems are outdated. And again, we're part of MCCC. There's questions on this project. I'm sure Randy can certainly answer it, but this is one where we're part of a joint powers group looking for a new system. We've been struggling for years, along with most of the state, in terms of finding a system that'll work. And so, as I understand, the MCCC is thinking we're finally at a position to find a replacement, and we'll have to do that with the other counties when they pull the trigger on that one, and that's again about $500,000 for that project as well. That'll be just Stearns County's share of that software system. Next slide is talking about the road construction program. Again, we're looking at a road construction year that's at $18.5 million, and these are the funding sources. I won't go through all of them, but you'll see that again, the transportation sales tax is going to be contributing about $7.2 million towards this year's program. The county levy is holding steady at $2.2 million, and the wheelage tax will be bringing in $1.6 million of that funding. Again, there's no federal aid this year for any of the projects, and again, that's part of the reason why the highway funding is going down. Last slide for me, and then I'll turn it over to Randy and Sarah, is again the use of project fund. Mike indicated we are using some fund balance, and that's what our project fund really is fund balance to use for some of our expenses so that they don't show up on the levy. And the one thing that we've highlighted for this year is, again, spending about $500,000 of project fund on the phone system. The remainder of the phone system is already allocated for in the IS budget, but $500,000 will be coming out of fund balance. And Randy, you're up.
So our fund balances for 2019 have had some changes. We have an unrestricted fund balance of almost $69 million. That is down almost $4 million from the previous year as a planned reduction. And as you know, some of that we've transferred out to help with some of our projects. But it is a very healthy fund balance yet at 43.75%, which is about in between the recommendation of 35 to 50% from the state auditor. The county tax rates continue to decrease, and this is a result of a market value increase of almost 5%, and then the tax capacity is up 5.35%, and then with the levy increase of 1.49%, that's going to result in a reduction of the tax rate, as you see here. So that's a nice trend over the last 4 years. Where your property tax dollars go, as you can see, the two big funds are the general fund and human services. The general fund is going to contain a lot of the funds, such as the sheriff's, environmental services, administration, the auditor treasurer. So a lot of the funds fall in the general fund, and then you can see all the other funds also that make up where your property tax dollars go. So this slide is our new tax base that was added. So this is not increase in market value. This is actually new tax base that we've had. So we have $186 million in new construction. That's a very healthy number. Down slightly last year, we had $191 million, but these are very strong numbers. Utilities are scheduled to go up about $33 million. We have 4 TIF districts that were decertified. So those increases over the years now will be available to all the taxing jurisdictions. The new tax base is $227 million, a very healthy number. The county tax on that alone is over $3 million. Increase in the tax capacity is over $3 million. The tax from those new construction and all those new sources is $1.4 million, almost 1.5. Our proposed levy increase is 1.2. So the new sources of taxes will pay for the entire levy increase this year, and you'll see that in the slides as we go, the effects of that. The change in tax base, this is a little bit busy and confusing slide, but what we have is typically have shifts between various property types, for instance, homestead and non-homestead, and we'll continue to see that throughout the year as people sign up for homestead. Also, this is a result of increase in market value. This is some normal increases, but the 5.35 on the bottom is the increase in tax capacity, which is a very healthy increase in our tax capacity. So that's a result of market value and new construction. So this is showing the effect of lowering of the tax rate. Our tax rate went down 3.67%. This is assuming there's no increase in your market value on these properties. So it's not meant to show what's actually happening. It's meant to show the effects of a decrease in the tax rate, and then the effects of that on people's county's taxes. The next slide is on average what people will see. Now, some will see differences here either going up or down, but this is the average. So, for instance, residential homestead went up on an average 3.2524%. You'll see the changes in county taxes. And as the other ones, agricultural homestead went down actually, the market value, commercial, industrial, and seasonal rec both went up a couple percent. So on average, most properties will see a decrease, and I think this is a slide that you can reflect on. This is a very rare occurrence. This is a very positive thing for the county. Now, I know when TNT statements go up, you'll get some questions on those. In other jurisdictions, schools and cities and townships may see increases or different changes. So the county taxes, for most people, I think will have a very positive effect with their taxes going down. And you notice on that last slide, as the residential $100,000 and $200,000 amounts actually went up. And for their taxes, the major effect is the losing of the homestead exclusion, and then just the increase in the market value really outweighs any change in the tax rate. So for $100,000 market value property, the homestead exclusion is almost $30,000. So as that homestead exclusion decreases, as the market value goes up, more of their property is subject to taxation. So they have a big tax break, and they're losing some of that as the market value goes up, and that has a big effect on their taxes. So certainly outweighs any change in the tax rate. I think I turn this back over to Mike to finish up.
Thank you, Randy. I didn't realize I didn't have my camera on the first when I was talking earlier. You didn't see my arms moving around because I still do that when I'm on camera. So what this budget means for 2022, so we try to think about looking, or at least think about the budget after this. And it'll be the last year of our sales tax for transportation, so that's probably something we should be talking about. We say balanced and sustainable into future years, and I think that's true mostly because we have a healthy fund balance, and because if you look at the next bullet, we're always subject to changes by the state and federal government, and there seems to be a lot of unknowns into the future. But I think given our healthy fund balance, we can weather some difficult time if we needed to. As we talked about, the debt service plan is being adjusted somewhat, and we'll bring that back to the board here when we kind of figure out where we're going to go with the administration center. But we didn't increase it for 2021. And then just a reminder that there's 2 positions that were recommended in the ICMA study that we would normally have put those in the 2021 budget. We didn't feel that was a prudent thing to do given our circumstances. And so sometime in the future, probably in 2022, we would be recommending adding those 2 sergeant positions. And a note here, which is really, it's good news. Our human services staff has done such a good job at increasing their revenue by their own efforts. And that is, we are seeing some benefit of that. And not that will be reduced, but that's, we're not going to see that kind of an increase every year in those revenues. And of course, as we said earlier, there just feels like there's a lot of unknowns right now and what things are going to look like in 2021. So the summary here is, the actual total budget expenditures are going down with a levy increase of 1.49%, which is $1,230,000, and the tax capacity, as Randy just went through, is increasing nicely, including real growth. Construction and TIF decertifications is actually more growth than what we're proposing in this preliminary levy. So that brings the tax rate down, of course, considerably. And so next steps in the process here, as we talked about in the beginning, is that you will need to adopt the preliminary levy and budget at your next meeting, or your last meeting in September. And then on December 1st, we'll hold the T&T and take that public input. And of course, before that, the notices go out to the public. And then your last meeting of 2020 is December 15th. And so that's the date that you would need to adopt a final budget. And I believe that's all we have. And we're happy to entertain some questions or comments.
Like, the levy has 2 million something for road construction. What was that? Was that 7 million last year and the year before?
Well, am I muted? No, I'm okay. The total levy to the highway would have been a larger number. I think what Steve was showing you was the amount that's going to construction is a 2.2 million.
That's correct.
But
The amount,
the total, the levy also supports the operations of the department. Does that help?
Well, I wanted a comparable number. I was looking at my old material and I couldn't find anything. The only thing I could find was 2020 was 7.4 million, 2019 7.4 million, and now we have the 2.2. And I was wondering, are those comparable or is that different? Or
the 2.2 is part of the 7 million. So again, we show the highway levy was 7.4 in 2020, and it's going to be 7.6 for 21. And of that
Okay.
7 million, 2.2 million is going not to operations but to construction, and that number is
okay,
the same as it was.
that answers my question.
Okay.
Because I was thinking I couldn't find anything with the 7 million, and maybe I just missed it.
All right. Any other questions?
One thing too that still bothers me all the time is some of the outside agencies that we fund. We've had real problems with the Initiative Foundation in the past with them misquoting statistics and blacking out part of their 990 forms and different things, and we're still funding them. And then the Humane Society. Now we got the St. Cloud Downtown Council. I think there are other cities that have councils, and they don't fund them. And it's still, we don't see any veterans organizations on this list, which to me would be more important than funding a humane society. So I think those are some areas that really need to be looked at.
Yeah, as you know, we reduced a number of those the last few years, and this year left them fairly constant. And certainly, if the board wants to make some changes to some of these, we certainly can. I think a couple of those examples, the St. Cloud Downtown Council, we used to pay them like $22,000 or something like that, and we reduced that down to more what it would be like if we were a member, because we are, a business downtown. So that's where we came up with that number. And a number of these other ones have been reduced. The Tri-County Humane Society, we decided we were reducing that, but now we're hoping to be able to use them for our sheriff's department, and so we left that one there as well. But certainly, if the board wants to make some changes there, we can certainly do that.
I just want to go ahead.
I was just going to have a question for Mike. If what the staff slide presentations, are they going to be on the website eventually too, or available?
Yeah, they'll put that on the budget where we have all the other budget information.
Okay, thanks.
And on those, again, on the outside agencies, Commissioner Notch, just because you spoke up, reminded me of it, because I think it was one of your requests last year. We tried to do something and talk to a number of other like chambers and EDAs and thought about maybe we could do a different model where we supported some of those entities throughout the county and some of the smaller towns. And we really actually didn't come up with a very good plan because there wasn't a lot of buy-in about it. There was a lot of thought that just doesn't make sense to do that. So we did go through that process last summer, actually.
Well, I wanted to thank staff. I mean, it's good to see the kinds of innovation that we have, and then also the acknowledgement and efforts to be working to keep this down. I know we're not voting on this today. We'll have an opportunity for the public to give input, but there's been a number of trends that are really very positive, seeing better outcomes and seeing some reduced costs, and clearly using technology as an example. We have to keep investing in that. We can't really do our work as a county if we don't do that. So just want to acknowledge that, because it is actually a big deal. And personally, I continue to be less worried about this year's revenue than next year's revenue. And so I think that you've shown some real prudence in the approach there too. So thank you.
Okay, any other comments by board members?
Just one, of course, Lee, I've got to say something. I just want to also say, our investments into technology and broadband, those that we invested in previous years have allowed us to, at least participate remotely under this COVID situation. So those were good investments. And again, we should keep an eye on making sure we don't short ourselves anywhere. Also, departments, again, I appreciate them reducing what they could in their departments. Also look for anything else we can, because again, I think we're going to see a squeeze on the public, and we want to reduce that. Mike, just looking at that, as far as the increases for those homeowners at 100,000 and 200,000, that was a reduction in the homestead exclusion. Again, it was hope we could do something for those folks, but that's something out of our control. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct, Commissioner. As that value goes up, then they lose that exemption. So even that little inflationary value that might be increased, if their value only went up that much, they would have been seeing a decrease in their taxes. But that exemption lessens as their value goes up, so that complicates it and creates that difference that you saw.
And then if I can just add one more thing, and maybe Coach Lensmeyer, and I know this is probably Randy and Jeff Johnson's department, but looking forward, I don't know if they study this at all. So if like this year, you're seeing this huge increase in building material costs, so there's a very good possibility, because people are bidding homes higher than actually what the values are. Is that going to have maybe an adverse effect next year as well? I don't know if the department studies those types of things, or if they see. I suppose they won't see those trends till the end of the year when they get the reports in to see what valuations are.
Yeah, I think when Jeff does his update, that would be a good question to ask him. But I know that the housing market is very strong. We're seeing a lot of transfers, probably because of low interest rates. And values are very strong too. So our building and housing market is very strong in central Minnesota. And eventually, you're right, we will see that continue to increase.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Any other questions or comments? I'm wondering at some point, if I don't know what the restrictions, limitations are relative to our outstanding bonds and bond issuance. We don't dwell on the cost of doing that, but it ain't cheap. Are there any opportunities that would justify the effort on refinancing? I mean, you're talking about debt service. It's a smaller item in the grand scope of things. It's under 5% of the budget, but does that make any sense whatsoever? With interest rates where they are at historic lows?
Yeah. We continuously look at refinancing. I think a lot of the debt we have left now, Lee, is going to be retired within the next couple of years. So at this point, to refinance is a little bit cost prohibitive, right? The issuing cost outweighs the savings and interest because the time period is so low. But yeah, it is something we look at, and I think with debt service, what the biggest concern and the biggest planning effort is what we're going to be doing in the future. So that's what's going to be driving debt service. So, yeah, that's
right.
a good point.
And not much else. This is for me anyway. It's a blizzard of information, and you know, this is the necessary to build our understanding of where we're at going forward. Are there any other questions related to the preliminary budget presentation? If you go back, you know, after the meeting and grind through this, you get another cut at the apple at the next meeting.